Imagine it's Halloween and you're walking through a haunted house or a haunted corn maze, or even just watching a scary movie and you get scared. You might get laughed at, but no one is going to think it's strange if you jump or you scream or you run, right? What about if you just went to sleep? So my last video, I started discussing how all mental health is necessarily tied to the culture a person is living in because context matters. Now, how does this play out in cultural expressions of distress? Let's talk about a few examples. For nearly every culture in the world, with the exception of one that we know about, there is an expectation surrounding emotions and behaviors that occur ritualistically when someone you know or love dies. Now, what that looks like is different based on where you live, based on your culture, your society, how we express those emotions, how long we have those emotions, what behaviors we express these emotions. All of that is bound up in cultural context. Funerals in some part of the world have wailing and overt displays of grief. In other places like mainstream US, funerals are subdued. They're much more quiet. They're respectful. Now, imagine wailing and throwing yourself into a grave with a coffin in the United States. People would be looking around going, this is unhinged. They should be medicated. Now, imagine you're in a culture where that is not only acceptable, but expected. And all you do is simply greet people with a smile and say, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Everybody there would say, this is unhinged. That person should be medicated, right? It matters. Let's give another example of depression. If I were to use one word to describe depression, what would you say? What is the overarching theme? In North America, US and Canada, as well as Europe and Australia, most people would likely say sadness. But in Israel, they would say anger. Sadness is an emotion that that culture is very comfortable with. There are days and festivals of lament and mourning, but anger isn't accepted in the same way, and therefore they often display depression as anger, not as sadness. Whereas in the United States, we're much more comfortable with anger. In Europe, we're much more comfortable with anger. Sadness is something that we kind of push to the side a little bit more. Now, in many places, including Mexico, India, Tunisia, primary symptom for depression is a headache or a neck ache. In fact, feelings of sadness or despair or guilt or anhedonia, any of these negative emotions, anhedonia meaning not finding pleasure in anything, these negative emotions, they're not even in the top 5 symptoms for depression. And some, it's not even the top 10. These are also countries that do not place high importance on feelings of happiness. And then once again, to just really drive the point home, in the US, when we see someone struggling with depression, they often talk about having a lack of energy. In Hong Kong, they struggle with a lack of calm. In fact, a sign of depression is too much energy, restlessness, flitting from one thing to another, because the norm or the ideal in Hong Kong is calm and peace. Whereas in the United States, our norm or ideal is happiness and lots of energy. So again, showing that there is something wrong has to be in direct opposition to what the norm or the ideal is. Otherwise, you're not actually showing that you're in a place of distress, that you need help in some way. And back to that example of falling asleep as a fear response, that's what some anthropologists found in a community in Bali. It's called fear sleep. And it's the way that this culture disengages and avoids fear or feeling out of control. Okay, we're done with cultural expressions of distress. Again, a lot, very big concepts in like a teeny tiny, really, really condensed. References will be in the comments. Please let me know if you have questions, or if you are from a culture or living in a different culture that has expressions of distress that are different than what we commonly talk about or see in the United States. Bye.